last year as your Consul General, as I am soon going back to Manila after concluding my tour of duty here in Los Angeles. At this juncture, I would like to leave you with four calls of action. First, please continue helping our kababayans back home in the Philippines. Second, connect with your fellow Filipino Americans and contribute to community building. Third, please represent the best of our traits and cultural heritage as Filipinos here in the United States. And lastly, when we are able to travel again, please visit the Philippines and learn more about the 7,000 islands in our magnificent archipelago. If given the opportunity, I will personally welcome you at the airport. I bring home with me nothing but great memories of the 4 years I've spent serving the community, and it's been an honor representing the Philippines in Southern California, Arizona, and Southern Nevada. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po kayong lahat. And again, a very warm welcome for tonight's Ugnay. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Cruz. We are very glad and thankful that the Post is working very hard through this pandemic in order to ensure the delivery of services to our kababayans in Los Angeles and other parts of the United States of America under your jurisdiction. We look forward to welcoming you here again in Manila. Our next speaker is a former Court of Appeals Associate Justice. He served at the second highest judicial court in the Philippines for more than a decade. He's an expert on litigation and corporate law, legal ethics, labor laws, and social legislation. He also served as a consultant in the House of Representatives and a faculty member at the San Beda College of Law. Now to share with us the Philippine government response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we have the Secretary and Chairperson of the Commission on Filipinos Overseas, Justice Francisco Acosta. Good morning, Justice.
The Honorable Consul General Adelio Angelito S. Cruz of the Philippine Consulate General in Los Angeles, Undersecretary Astrabel Pimentel Naik, our Executive Director, Vice Consul Diane Pastrana, and Consul Diane Pastrana, Vice Consul Joan Macris, Honorary Consul Odi J. De Castro of the Filipino Community of San Diego, Labor Attaché Army Peña. Our distinguished speakers will be properly introduced. Our Filipino community leaders in Southern California, Nevada, and Arizona, my fellow kawani sa CFO, ladies and gentlemen. Magandang gabi sa ating mga kababayan dyan sa Amerika at magandang tanghali sa ating mga kababayan dito sa Pilipinas. Sa aking mga kailyan na imbag nga aldaw kada kayo amin apo. Last year, we were there in Los Angeles, San Diego, and Las Vegas for our Ugnayan. Please allow us to acknowledge with gratitude the Filipino communities, organizations, and leaders with whom we had the honor of engaging in our town meetings, namely the Philippine Workers Center, led by Ms. Aquilina Soriano Bersosa. He is the executive director. He is also one of our awardees of the Gawad Pangulo and speaker for today. The Coalition of Filipino American Chambers of Commerce, led by its president, Jerry Palon, Ms. Ellie Samson, he's a corporate secretary and vice president for international trade, and Ms. Janice Jimenez, who is a corporate treasurer and vice president of finance, and Paul Mirador, board member. The Filipino American Community of Los Angeles, led by attorney Fernandico Gono, its president. Our own very own Binibining Maharlika, the teachers of Clark County, District of Las Vegas, Nevada, the Association of Filipino Doctors of Southern California, led by Dr. And the search to involve Filipino Americans, SIPA, led by Lyle Del Mundo, and the board members, Jennifer Taylor, Fiji Victoriano, and Rosalie Manansala. The Filipino American Society of Architects and Engineers of Southern California, led by Engineer Jose Ablay and Elvi Agamata. Father Elmer Empinado of the St. Lorenzo Ruiz Parish. The handsome golfer, Attorney Ansberto Paredes. The Lex Tallones Fraternitas, led by Attorney Eugene Mendoza, the lead CFO volunteer. And last but not least, Joey Quinto, publisher of California Journal for Filipino Americans, and others who warmly welcomed us and made our Ugnayan last year a success. I would like also to make a special mention of the Buhay sa Amerika, led by Ria Luz and Ethel Lusario, who hosted us, the team from CFO, only some few weeks ago. This year's Ugnayan, with the theme We Rise as One, is a series of webinars organized by the CFO to strengthen our ties and link with the Filipino communities abroad. But first things first, on behalf of our President, Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte, let me thank all of you, our modern day heroes, for all your sacrifices and your contributions to your families back home here in the Philippines, the communities that you support, and the Philippine development in general. We remain grateful for the remittances you have sent to the Philippines, which has reached a record high of US dollars 33.5 billion this year. The forecast was a reduction of about 20%. But then with the Filipino resilience, that prediction proved wrong, because according to our figures from January to August, cash remittances amounted to 19.285, or only 2%, or 2.6% lower than the remittances of the same period of last year. Although overseas Filipinos will be sending home fewer dollars this year, the final figure will be far from the worst scenario planners were earlier bracing for. I am sure that you are anxious to learn how our country is coping with the adversities and difficulties brought about by the pandemic. At the outset, let me assure you that our government, led by President Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte, our Tatay Digong, is very much on top of the situation. Following the confirmation of the first COVID-19 case, the government immediately imposed several travel bans and implemented strict health protocols. Establishments started checking the temperature of their guests and requested them to sanitize before entry. With these simple but practical strategies, we momentarily managed to prevent the further spread of the virus and the first local transmission, which we confirmed on March 7, 2020, prompted the President to declare a state of national calamity for 6 months. Then, on March 17, 2020, upon the advice of the Interagency Task Force on Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, the entire Luzon was placed on an enhanced community quarantine. This suspended classes in all levels and mass public transport facilities, prohibited mass gatherings, and imposed stricter home quarantines. Subsequently, the government implemented community quarantines in other areas, mobilized healthcare facilities and resources, and enforced social distancing protocols. With the overwhelming support of our Congress, Republic Act 11469, or the Bayanihan to Heal as One, was signed into law last March 24, 2020, to serve as a blueprint in the fight against COVID-19. The President was authorized to realign 275 billion from the 2019 and 2020 general appropriations. When COVID-19 struck, President Duterte clearly spelled out his priority. Bago ang lahat, buhay muna. Life above everything else. It would have been a more difficult choice had the President not put in place sound economic fundamentals since the beginning of his administration. Because of the milestones we've achieved as a nation, from instituting long-awaited reforms in the way government works, practicing prudent economic management, we faced pandemic with our governance, economy, and social services is stronger than ever. All this laid a strong foundation for our country to uphold the primacy of life in the midst of a global health emergency. On September 11, 2020, the President signed the Bayanihan 2, or the Bayanihan to Recover as One, which seeks to cushion the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bayanihan 2 provides for a stimulus package of 140 billion in regular appropriation and 25 billion in standby funding. The biggest share of the budget will go to loans for sectors hit by the pandemic, like micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises, transport, tourism, and agriculture. It also allocates allowances to students in both private and public elementary schools, high schools, and colleges whose families were affected by work stoppage due to lockdowns. Further, Bayanihan 2 provides for the government's health-related responses, including the retroactive payment of 100,000 hazard duty pay for health workers, employment of existing emergency health workers, risk allowance for private and public health workers attending to COVID-19 patients. Bayanihan 2 likewise provides fiscal resources to support the healthcare system, enhance testing, tracing, isolation, and treatment, which are crucial to boost confidence, get people back to work, and restore consumer demand. Support public transport, notably through service contracting and bicycle lanes that will allow the public to safely get back to work. Support critically affected sectors and workers in ECQ areas, provide capital infusion to government financial institutions, allow them to lend to more small businesses, and help smaller banks provide equity support to strategically distressed firms and allow banks to dispose of bad loans and assets so that they can serve more businesses. The total support from both fiscal and financial resources amounts to some 95 billion pesos, as the government financial institutions, aided by regulatory relief, can leverage the initial capital infusion several times to provide more credit guarantees, more wholesale banking services to help smaller banks and microfinance lenders help their clients, and more lending to more small businesses. Bayanihan 2 is one instrument in our recovery. The acceleration of our Build, Build, Build program, now expanded to cover health and digital infrastructure, and the 2021 General Appropriations Budget are two complementary measures that will improve our recovery prospects. The Philippine economy contracted in the first and second quarter of 2020. Fully aware of the impact of ECQ on businesses and livelihoods, the government ramped up spending to protect, among others, some 18 million low-income households and 3.1 million workers of small businesses by providing them the biggest ever income support and wage subsidy program. This record support is evident in much higher government consumption spending, which grew to 22% in the second quarter. All in all, some 655 billion pesos were allocated to support the people and the healthcare system under pillars 1 and 2 of our COVID-19 response strategy, of which 400 billion pesos have been disbursed. The administration quickly resumed the infrastructure program. Around 264 projects implemented by DPWH, DOTR, and BCDA have resumed starting June 2020 at an accelerated pace. On the supply side, agriculture grew by 1.6%, roughly in line with the population growth. In particular, rice production grew by 7.2% as implementation of the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund under the rice tariffication law is accelerated. While the decline in GDP is huge, we're beginning to see signs of recovery. Manufacturing production, exports, and imports have taken a U-turn as the pace of decline slows. To manage and combat COVID-19, the government embarked on a test, trace, and treat strategy. From just one testing laboratory in January 2020, we have 147 accredited testing laboratories nationwide as of October 19, 2020. There are 99 laboratories that are still undergoing certification, while the National Capital Region has the most number of licensed laboratories nationwide. More regional laboratories are on the way to becoming accredited. As testing laboratories increase, so is our testing capability. Our cumulative testing output is at 4.422 million tests that have been conducted on more than 4 million individuals. As of October 21, 2020, there are 44,697 total active cases. Our country's bed utilization rate is only at 41%. or 8,925 beds occupied out of 21,556 bed capacity. For our ICU beds, utilization rate is at 47%, or 894 ICU beds occupied out of 1,905. Meanwhile, only 47%, or 5,769 isolation beds were occupied out of a total of 13,610. Currently, there are a total of 28,156 contact tracing teams with 248,448 members. On top of our testing laboratories, we have 4 mega swabbing centers, which produced a total of 330,259 outputs. There are 10,948 COVID temporary treatment and monitoring facilities, of which 80 is in NCR, 2,027 in Luzon, 4,109 in the Visayas, and 4,732 in Mindanao. There is a total of 20 mega COVID TTMFS with 3,558 bed capacity, of which 1,810 or 50.87% are occupied. Overall, there are 1,839 referral with total bed capacity of 11,160 or 37.7% are occupied, and 18,446 or 62% still available. These efforts have accelerated the turnaround of our COVID testing from 2 weeks back in March to only 2 to 3 days starting June 10. Our overseas Filipinos need only to wait for 2 or 3 days upon their arrival to get their swab results and go home to the province. Among our vast Filipino diaspora, the OFWs, or the overseas Filipino workers, were among the hardest hit by the onslaught of COVID-19. I understand their fears and uncertainty during these times of great adversity. I hope that our government's stimulus plan will alleviate their plight. This government will continue to provide them all the assistance they need to start over here or abroad. Our Department of Foreign Affairs facilitated the repatriation of affected overseas Filipinos all over the world with the assistance of Philippine embassies and consulates. To date, 223,294 overseas Filipinos were repatriated, of which 149,424 were land-based, while 73,870 were sea-based. The DFA mounted hundreds of special commercial repatriation flights to bring home our kababayans. As soon as the OFW set foot in the country, we have them undergo test to ensure that they are COVID-free. As they await the results, the Department of Transportation and the OWA provide room accommodation, while the DOH offers free mental health services to help them adjust to the drastic changes brought about by the pandemic. The DOTR then transports them to the respective provinces through the Hatid Probinsya para sa OFWs program. As of October 19, 2020, a total of 479,753 returning OFs and OFWs arrived via airplane and vessels. Of these, 441,186 returning OFs arrived in Manila, 40,888 arrived in Cebu via Clark, and 26,049 in Cebu. Some arrived in Subic and Bataan, and even as far as Tawi-Tawi, Zamboanga. Of these numbers, OWA provided assistance to more than 333,000, of which 153 were assisted to the Hatid Sundo program, 156,000 through the OFW Kalinga program, 7,123 through the Tulong Marino program, and 19,467 stranded OFWs. Our government catered to the medical and social needs of our returning overseas Filipinos. A total of 206,719 of them were subjected to COVID testing and rapid tests. There were 4,930 of them who tested positive with the virus, but rest assured that the government provided the necessary assistance to nurse them back to health. The sudden loss of income is the biggest challenge to our repatriated OFWs. According to our Labor Secretary, Silvestre Bello, close to 280,000 OFWs have received cash aid under the Abot Kamay ang Pagtulong, AKAP, through the 40 Philippine Overseas Labor Offices, the POLO, and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration. As of October 2, the Department of Labor had disbursed some 2.8 billion in AKAP funds. AKAP has approved 312,974 applications for assistance received by POLOs and OWA field offices. According to the latest information, more than 100,000 OFWs are still expected to arrive in our country before the year ends. Rest assured that we will fully take care of them. Our OFWs can also take part in TESDA's online program, an alternative mode of learning with 71 free online courses to effectively assist them to transition to jobs that are highly in demand in these times. The free skills training provided by TESDA increases the chances of our displaced workers, including our returning OFW, be used if they decide to return for overseas work in the near future. Moreover, as part of the government's reintegration program of returning OFWs, this TESDA will tap them as technical experts or technical vocational trainers on emerging and advanced technologies in the country. The Social Amelioration Program was implemented to ensure the provision of safety nets, emergency subsidies, and other social protection programs to the impoverished sectors of the country and mitigate the socio-economic effects of the pandemic. Under the SAP or SAP, the government set aside 206 billion for poor and low-income households who were adversely affected by the current pandemic, including the wage earners who are on a no work, no pay arrangement. At the forefront of the SAP implementation is our Department of Social Work and Development, led by no less than General Joselito Bautista. The SAP has extended assistance worth 182 billion pesos, benefiting 31.6 million beneficiaries. Please look at your screen and see the components of the social amelioration package. We have one for the Pantawid, Pamilyang Filipino Program, 4Ps, and those which are non-4Ps, benefiting millions of our kababayans, no? Social amelioration package for drivers of PUBs and TNTVs, Grab, no? We have regular emergency subsidy programs, assistance to individuals in crisis, social pension, relief assistance, supplementary feeding program. Aside from this, we have our Department of Labor Social Amelioration Program, namely the Tulong Panghanap Buhay. It's all in the screen. COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program, Abot Kamay at Pagtulong Akap. And of course, we have our assistance to our farmers. The Department of Agriculture has its own social amelioration program, financial subsidy for rice farmers, and expanded SURE program. Now, you may ask, how can we be sure that all these funds are received by the people or the beneficiaries? To ensure that only valid and deserving beneficiaries are given, the DSWD developed the Relief Agad database, an online system to aid the generation of the beneficiaries' information and fast-track the information implementation of the social amelioration program. In addition, the Department of Interior and Local Government issued guidelines directing all local government units to upload in their respective websites, social media accounts, as well as printouts, the list of beneficiaries who have already received the emergency subsidy. It also directed all LGUs to closely coordinate with the DSWD as the lead implementer, and the AFP and PNP as support to the DSW in ensuring the expeditious and orderly implementation of the social amelioration program. No wonder, in our latest survey, our president has received a performance rating of 91% and trust rating of 91%, all-time high. In short, 9 out of 10 Filipinos approve of President Duterte's performance and the country's fight with the coronavirus disease. It is also unequivocal means that the Filipino people are solidly behind the leadership of our president. This pandemic may yet unite us as a people in genuine solidarity. While the pandemic spawned a new normal in our society, it also ushered a new economy, which, as described by Governor Ben Jokno, is defined as an economy that is more inclusive, with the government pushing for the widespread use of technology to make transactions online. We are seeing a more technologically savvy population that is comfortable with using digital platforms to conduct their financial transactions, and we are committed to reach more remote and far-flung areas through digital alternatives. We have digitized a lot of government transactions. As a matter of fact, our transactions in CFO are all online and digitized and made this available online. Not wanting to stall further the education of our youth, we have made their schooling a combination of both blended and online learning. While the lockdown imposed by the government may have caused the economy to stall in the first half of the year, we believe that this is a necessary but temporary measure in order to save lives and protect livelihoods. According to the Department of Foreign Affairs, we seem to be the only country in the world that provide the following free services: free RT-PCR testing upon arrival at our airports, as well as free accommodation, food, transportation, and financial aid upon the arrival of our overseas Filipinos. We may not be a rich country, but we know how to take care of our own, especially our migrant workers. We understand the apprehension of the families of our migrant workers, majority of whom are living in the countryside. Hence, we pull out all the stops to make sure and take care of their needs from A to Z upon the return to our country. After several months of dealing with the virus, we have come to the conclusion that we still have to live with it for some time. We will have to adjust both our policies and personal behaviors. The cost-benefit trade-off has now shifted from just saving lives from COVID-19 to saving lives from all other factors such as hunger, from loss of income, and other diseases, including those caused by other types of viruses, bacteria, and lifestyle. This means a rebalancing of the health and economic objectives. As we transition to a new normal, the government will continue to support the recovery of the economy, opening up the economy and bringing back livelihoods safely require massive testing. A provision in the Bayanihan 2 is to finance the testing of around 10 million Filipinos, including workers, over the next 12 months. This requires increasing testing from the current peak of 22,700 to around 32,000 tests per day in the coming weeks. This would be sufficient to bring down the positivity rate to below 5%. Increased testing, tracing, isolation, and treatment are indeed crucial to boost confidence, get people back to work, and restore consumption demand. As confidence in work is restored, we also need to ensure sufficient and safe public transport. The Bayanihan 2 has provisions that can support public transport system, including the contracting of PUVs to incentivize the resumption of operators following reduced capacity and sanitation standards. The road that we are traversing right now seems to be endless. But I believe that with the continued support of our massive Filipino diaspora in the United States and across the globe, we will eventually see the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel. We shall continue to pray with the rest of the world that a vaccine will soon be made available. Our president has assured us that once the vaccine is available, we have the funds and make it available to each and every of the Filipinos, especially the poor, who will be the first to receive it. Ang buhay ay tunay na matilinhaga. Ang kasawian ay kalimitan nagdudulot ng tagumpay. Sana ang pandemyang ito ay siyang magpapatibay ng ating pagmamalasakit at pagmamahal sa bawat isa. At mapaigting ang ating pagkakaisa bilang isang bansa, isang lahi, matatag, malakas, at makadiyos na Pilipino. Tayo ay Pilipino, kaya natin ito. Mabuhay at maraming salamat po. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Secretary Acosta, for sharing with us how the Philippine government is responding to the global health crisis and helping Filipinos here and abroad in this time of pandemic. The novel coronavirus outbreak, which was declared by the World Health Organization as a global health emergency, has adversely affected millions of people worldwide, including thousands of overseas Filipinos. The United States of America currently has the most number of reported COVID 19 cases, reaching 8 million. In the latest data, 800,000 of these cases are reported in California. To share with us how the Filipino American community has been coping with the COVID 19 pandemic, we have with us four distinguished Filipino community leaders and presidential awardees. But before we proceed with their sharing and presentations, we would like to inform our participants that we will have our open forum later after all the speakers have finished with their sharing and presentations. In the meantime, if you are watching with us via Zoom, you could type your questions addressed to the resource speaker in the Ask Question button. If you're with us via Facebook Live, you can use the chat box or comment section to type in your questions. Then later, we will ask our resource speakers to answer each one of them. And now, let us hear from our first speaker from Los Angeles, Ms. Aquilina Soriano Versosa of the Filipino Workers Center of Southern California, which is a recipient of the 2018 Presidential Banag Awards. Ms. Soriano Versosa has served as the Executive Director of PwC for 20 years and has been working with the Filipino community for 24 years, both here in Los Angeles and in the Philippines. She has been at the head of PwC as it had been a part of growing statewide and national movement of domestic workers. She studied her Bachelor of Arts in Asian American Studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. She was also a recipient of the Frederick Douglass 200 Abolitionist Award and is also serving on the board of Mission Asset Fund and current board president of the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Aki. So Miss Aki, can you share with us how Filipino American domestic workers have been affected by the current pandemic and how the PwC has been helping them and other Filipino Americans during this unprecedented situation?
Yes, thank you. Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Uh, not all people have been impacted equally, and those who are already disadvantaged actually have been impacted harder. Filipinos, as you said, half of Filipinos in America are here in California, and this is where the highest number of cases have been as well. Domestic workers, home care workers, especially, are frontline workers who have been very impacted by this pandemic. Both one because nursing homes, assisted living facilities, boarding care homes are the number one workplace that have the largest number of COVID cases. And we have a lot of Filipinos working as caregivers, administrators in these facilities. Home care workers are also caring for some of the most vulnerable to this pandemic, seniors. So they're also very impacted because they are frontline workers who are being exposed to the pandemic, but they don't have as much institutional support for protective personal equipment, for information about best practices, about how to keep themselves safe, how to keep the clients that they're caring for safe. And so we have seen a disproportionate number of both cases and deaths in the Filipino American community and amongst domestic workers, especially amongst home care workers. Just in our organization alone, we have lost five of our members here in Los Angeles. And for the Filipino American community, there is a higher mortality once you if you are tested positive and come down with COVID. So what we've been doing is we've been trying to respond to the issues, especially of those who are most vulnerable, especially domestic workers. Domestic workers often are paid below minimum wage, suffer from wage theft, and live in crowded conditions. So when the pandemic hit, we ramped up our infrastructure right away to try and support those in our community who really needed it. So we began right away, knowing that we needed to help people connect with food. There are many caregivers who themselves are seniors and have underlying conditions. So it's difficult for them to go outside, especially when the sheltering at home was quarantine was began. So we began securing and delivering PWC care boxes, which are groceries. You can go to the next slide. And there started to be different food programs in the area, but none of them provide actually culturally appropriate food. And a lot of them also do not connect specifically with the Filipino community, especially low-wage workers. So we actually have gotten out over 800 care boxes in grocery deliveries here locally, Los Angeles, San Diego, but then across the nation, also to human trafficking survivors who are also impacted right away. You can go to the next one. And we also built up an infrastructure of volunteers as well. So as we know that everyone has needs in this time, but everyone has something to contribute as well. So we have an amazing base of volunteers who are helping us to deliver the services and resources that we're providing. Next. Just some pictures next. We've also been providing care meals, hot care meals that are already cooked through partnerships with Filipino restaurants to the local historic Filipino town area, including partnerships with Island Pacific, Phil House, Mother Movement, Mary's, Victory Outreach, and Pitas of Manila. And we've gotten out over 1,000 hot meals in the neighborhood to low-wage workers and their families and to seniors who are not able to go out. Next. This gives you an idea of some of the food and the scale of food that we've been getting out on a weekly basis. Next. And some of our volunteers who are trained in contactless delivery to deliver these out. Next. So PwC also has really seen that the need for housing for caregivers who need to temporarily quarantine, who either have been exposed or themselves are positive, has been a really critical service, and to stop actually the spread of the virus in our community. Most of them live, it might be 16 to 1 house, or it might be 5 people to a 1-bedroom apartment. And in those kind of conditions, there's really no way to quarantine safely if you are exposed. So we have been securing sites where workers can safely quarantine, and providing them connections to both testing as well as information directly to expert doctors about what their next steps are to make sure that they get taken care of, and if they are positive and then are negative, when they're ready to go back to work. Next. Some of them have had to quarantine in their cars. Some of them, as you see, someone in a tent because he couldn't go back in. He didn't go back in to expose the rest of his roommates. Next. So, so also we've been doing cash assistance because the economic difficulties have been huge. Hundreds of thousands have applied for unemployment, and to this time, only 1/3 of the jobs have come back, and many are suffering from loss of hours. So we have the Care Fund through the National Domestic Worker Alliance, which is for nannies, caregivers, and housekeepers. And PwC has been able to facilitate $1 million getting out to domestic workers to 250 or 2,500 Filipino domestic workers. We also are administering the California Immigrant Resiliency Fund for Los Angeles County specifically, and we are distributing $700,000 to about 1,750 immigrants who are not eligible for other forms of relief because of immigration status. And then we provide information that connects people to other opportunities that arise for cash assistance, rental assistance, and such. Next. And then we've seen it's just really critical to get information out as well. So we've been hosting regular town halls, virtual town halls, in a partnership with the Filipino channel to get out good information about what is happening, updates on what is happening in our community and how folks can connect to resources as well. Next. And at the same time, we continue to advocate for domestic worker rights. So Senator Kamala Harris is also a champion of our domestic worker Bill of Rights on the federal level, and Filipino Worker Center leaders are at the head of, even during this pandemic, helping to move forward policies that lift up the rights of domestic workers. Next and final, we're all in this together, and I thank you for hosting us here. Thank you to all of the other speakers and panelists for really bringing together this important information. We are all in this together. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aki. Thank you for your sharing with us how the coronavirus pandemic has affected our domestic workers, especially our home care workers, and the Filipino-American community in general. We also commend the PWC for the support it has given to the community, such as your care programs, the temporary housing, the cash assistance, as well as for advocating for the domestic workers' rights. So from Los Angeles, let us now move to Arizona. Our speaker from Arizona is a federal civilian employee with the Department of Defense of the United States Air Force. As program manager, she manages the commander support programs, accomplishing all necessary internal operations. Born and raised in Manila, she immigrated to the US in 1986 to join her husband, who had also served in the US Air Force. Currently, she is the chairman of the Council of Filipino Organizations in Arizona, a nonprofit organization with over 17 member organizations. Now joining us from Arizona is Ms. Ana Alma de Garis. Ms. Alma, with this hello, Ms. Alma. With this ongoing pandemic, can you please describe the situation of the Filipino Americans in Arizona and what has been the support given by the Council of Filipino Organizations in Arizona to help them?
Yes, first of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share our experiences to everyone in California, Philippines, and Nevada. Next slide. So I've narrowed it down to 5 topics that involves educational, financial, physical, emotional, and health impact of the assistance programs to the Philippines. So first, under education, we have one organization called Abaca Foundation. They teach Filipino, Tagalog, to non-speaking Filipino children, mostly whose parents are Americans and then Filipino. So during the pandemic, they were greatly affected because all the resources were cut down because it's an extracurricular activity. So a lot of the parents, because they of job loss and less hours, they were not sent to these classes anymore. So because of that, all the resources were decreased, like school supplies, and then not enough computers are available to those that are willing to do online classes. So next for the financial, like most that I've heard earlier, a lot of those that were impacted were small businesses, especially those that are owned by Filipinos, mostly care homes, and we have alterations, and one alteration group almost shut down because no one's been going to their business. So what they did was she resorted to making masks, and it became a source of their income because there were about 5 families that are dependent on her. So she had to strive hard to keep it going. And then a lot of those business owners, they resorted to delivering food instead. So what they did is they do some home cooking and they deliver food. Those that are working from home, they're doing 2 jobs, teleworking, and at the same time cooking food and advertising. Especially a lot of bakery items are rampant here in Arizona. So they're actually reinventing ways to provide income for the family. Now, physically and emotionally, trending physical activity, we do a lot of hiking here in Arizona. So a lot more hikers are out there, and a lot of walking and running and swimming classes because all the gyms are closed like most states are. And there's a lot of reading classes online, and of course, full-blown karaoke sessions, full-blown. So those are our physical activities. And because of the travel ban, there are a lot of home improvements. That's the #1 project right now. Everybody's doing a lot of home improvement. And a lot of annual events and conferences are canceled, to include the Fall Nursing Conference. Our annual Philippine Independence Day celebration is canceled. So a lot of our annual celebrations are canceled. So we resorted to private, small parties. And because of this, family-wise, we are more close online through social media with our family. 2 of my children are out of state, so there's more connection via social media. And then also 2 of our clubs have delivered foods to our seniors in the Filipino community because, of course, they cannot leave the house. So they would, normally it would be an annual picnic. So what they did, they delivered food to the frontliners also of the different hospitals in the valley. And a lot of Filipino-owned small catering businesses provided food to the VA emergency hospital. Next slide. We have 2 active nurses association. One in the valley, in the West Valley, is West and East Valley, the Philippine Nurses Association, Arizona. They continually provided health-related information to the community, and a lot of them are retired nurses. Although a lot of them would like to go back to work as volunteers, because of their age, a lot of them couldn't. So what they did was they just did a lot of health-related issues online. So they publish a lot of information. So Filipinos that are teleworking and frontline workers have all the necessary information to keep themselves safe while working. Also, the Philippine Nurses Association of Arizona did a lot of Meals on Wheels. There were a lot of nurses in their association that were affected, that contracted the virus. So they did a lot of errands for them, picked up groceries, they did weekly healing prayers, they did Zumba for the members, and they're currently in work in doing virtual mental health support for the frontline workers. Also in August, the Philippine Nurses Association of America provided face shields to the Philippine Nurses Association of Arizona. And in July, the Council of Filipino Organization partnered with the Vietnamese community and gave out almost 1,000 free masks to the community, of course, headed by the Philippine Nurses Association of Arizona. And then down south, we have the Filipino American Nurses Organization in the Grand Canyon State. Majority of them are Filipinos, so they also provided free meals to the COVID units at different workstations in the hospital, especially those that were assigned to other areas because of COVID. So they were stationed, a lot of the healthcare workers, nurses were stationed in other parts of the hospital. So they couldn't find the time to, get lunch or dinner. So what they did was they sent meals to the frontline workers. And most recently, they just concluded a 3 series of talks with topics ranging from updates on COVID-19 and ways to cope with COVID-19, both medically and holistically. And then the last portion is interrupted assistance programs to the Philippines. These are the programs that were very much affected because of COVID. There were a lot of medical missions, annual medical missions by the Lions Club and other nonprofit organizations that were halted because they couldn't travel to the Philippines. And other fundraising efforts that we normally do when we send boxes, balikbayan boxes, to the Philippines for the Home of the Ages, scholarship boxes, and special gadgets for special children. All of these were suspended because we were not sure how the balikbayan boxes were gonna take in place, because there were a lot of balikbayan boxes that were stranded in the Philippines. I was told the medical mission organization, the Lions Club, they sent all these balikbayan boxes with all the medical equipment, and they're still, I was told, in storage in the Philippines. And lastly, financial burden to the organizations, mostly because of unrefunded airfare tickets to the Philippines. That's greatly affected our organization financially. Also, I'm not sure if Ethel Rosario is online, but she can talk about MOM and the 3000 Club movement later on. And then next slide. And then other matters that a lot of the Filipinos living in Arizona are would like to have answers later on. Just recently, like two days ago, our Governor Ducey, issued a proclamation about the Filipino American Heritage Month, stating that Filipinos are now the largest Asian ethnic group in Arizona. In this regard, we would like to know when the consulate is going to travel to Arizona again to do their annual service. Also, a lot of them are asking why there is no consulate here in Arizona. And also another concern is, there are a lot of non-documented Filipinos in Arizona as well. And the CFO would like to partner with the consulate or with the Philippine government on how we can help them, especially during COVID-19. And there has been, next one is there has been an increase in domestic abuse against spouses, mostly Filipino spouses. And we're trying to set up a support group for them. And Miss Ethel is the one who's actually running that show. And so one question is, can the Philippine government provide legal service or intervention for abused Filipino spouses that are currently green card holders? And also, one last thing, travel restrictions on non-Philippine passport holders. A lot of them are wondering why American citizens who are former Filipino citizens Why do we need a visa, a Philippine visa, despite traveling with green card holder spouses? And a lot of the American citizens feel that it's more difficult to travel to the Philippines nowadays. And lastly, Filipino teachers. There has been a surge of Filipino teachers in Arizona, and also there is a lack of teachers in the Valley. We would like to know if there's a program under your office that handles teaching opportunities for interested Filipino teachers to come over to Arizona. And lastly, about the census in 2020, like I mentioned earlier, the Filipinos are now the largest Asian ethnic group in Arizona. Thank you. That's all.
Very much, Ms. Alma. You have shown with us the comprehensive efforts of your organization during the height of the pandemic, on starting from education to finance to physical and mental health, and even balikbayan boxes. So, we wish to commend you and your organization for keeping on and pushing forward. Now, for your questions, I'm sure later on a lot of our viewers online also have questions. Please, for those that are watching via Zoom, just type them down on the Q&A portion of our Zoom chat. And for those that are live or are watching live on Facebook, please comment your questions down below. Okay? Now we have heard from Los Angeles and Arizona. Now it's time to hear from Nevada. We are very lucky today to have two speakers from Nevada. Our first speaker is Miss Gloria Kawili, a multi-awarded civic leader in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. She is a founding member of several Pan-Asian organizations dedicated to empowering workers, nurturing and developing leadership skills in youth and women. Besides her work with the AAPI community, she has devoted a significant amount of her time in promoting community and economic development programs that help the poor in the Philippines. Her professional experience includes more than 30 years of service with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Joining Ms. Kawili is Ms. Amy Belmonte. Ms. Belmonte has a master's degree in public health.
She's muted. Right there. She's muted right there.
You got muted.
Oh, I apologize. I thought I was not. Okay, so weren't you able to hear me the first part?
You did.
Oh
we
my
did.
God.
We did.
Okay, you did. Okay, because I thought I was muted. Okay, so joining with us with Miss Kawili is Miss Amy Belmonte. Miss Belmonte has a master's degree in public health and worked with the Hawaii and Nevada state legislatures to develop programs for the underprivileged. She is now an entrepreneur and owns the Senior Resources and Services LTC, where she pioneered the establishment of geriatric care and management, consulting and marketing firm, which focuses on a holistic and comprehensive approach in helping the aging population. She has been active in the community as president of the Filipino American political organization with equal representation in Nevada and held various positions of several nonprofit organizations. Let us all welcome Ms. Amy Belmonte and Ms. Gloria Kawili from Nevada. So, Ms. Gloria and Ms. Amy, can you share with us the situation in Nevada, how the Filipino American community there have been coping with the health crisis, and what have been the various initiatives and efforts of the community to get through this difficult situation?
Together, I believe we will give you a presentation that really represents our community. But before that, I really want to say thank you very much for asking us to be part of this wonderful presentation tonight. And Secretary Acosta, earlier before we started the program, you were so worried about the length of your presentation. But really, I would like to say that I think your presentation should be sent to all the Philippine consulates, the Philippine embassy, to be shared with the community. I think it should be published and that every Filipino in the United States should really read it. It's really an eye-opener for all of us to really find out what's going on in the Philippines as far as the COVID is concerned. So I hope that you do it. And we want to say really thank you to Conjen Cruz. You did announce that this was your last term and this was apparently your last year. And we want to thank you for your service. And then hopefully too, by the end of Amy and my presentation, we hope we have risen to the 4 points that you are leaving us with. So thank you very much. To start off our presentation, please allow me to give you a short profile of the Filipinos and the Filipino Americans in Nevada. We are currently the majority minority community in the state of Nevada. The 2010 census shows us at 170,000 Filipino Americans. The 2020 census has just ended, and we are sure that these numbers have spiked up tremendously. Next to us in count, I'd like to mention the Chinese Americans with just 50,000. So you just can see that we are really the majority minority. Filipino and Filipino Americans are in all facets that make Nevada the great diverse state that it is. Most of us are transplants. Some of us are called seasonals. Some of us are called retirees. But there are so many of us still in the workforce. We are in the hospitality industry, in the health institutions, both hospitals, urgent care, senior care, and we are providers of medical and private practices. We are small business owners, and we are also in government. We have a large number of PhilAm organizations, as is in other states. We are provincial, professional, we are businesses, we are collegial, and our diversity within our own community is really our strength. In other words, we are a large part of the Nevada tapestry. In the times of the pandemic, in these times, we are the frontliners. We are the essentials. Amy and I have seen our community grow and be counted in this state, both economically and politically. At the outbreak of the coronavirus, our community was hard hit. Many suffered layoffs. Many were furloughed. Small businesses were closed. And the loss of income because of the economic downturn is too alarming. Yet, through the many challenges, our community has remained vigilant, united, and supportive of each other. In March, at the height of the pandemic, we launched the Bayanihan Project in Las Vegas. One of our very own community leaders, Jing Espirito, reached out to Amy and myself and a few others to figure out what can we do? What should we do for our community? Our goal was to offer relief to our kababayans in need by providing them with bags of food and other essentials. And I'd like to ask Amy, please, to explain this program.
Thank you so much, Gloria, and a warm and pleasant good evening to all the people here in the United States, and of course, good afternoon or good day there in the Philippines. Naimbag nga aldaw mo, Secretary Acosta. I didn't know that we are from the same region. But nevertheless, I echo the same like what Gloria said, that your presentation was so informative that I was just thinking of our upcoming conference, regional conference here, that need to be really presented. And tonight we would like to inform you folks that indeed, just like what Gloria said, the Filipino American community here in Nevada has grown 4 times faster than any Filipino American group in any parts of the nation. So with that, when the COVID-19 strike, we knew that we have some crisis in our hands because, as you know, a lot of our kababayans are workers at the hotel and casino, which got shut down. The first time ever in the history of Nevada that our strip was shut down, and many of them are Filipinos. And of course, also, we have a lot of small businesses. And with that crisis in mind, what we did is we gathered the Filipino American community leaders in collaboration with the National Federation of Filipino American Association. And like what Gloria said, came up with the project Bayanihan. What an appropriate name indeed. We do not have any organization here or an agency that is paid to do this. So we gathered all the volunteers, the Filipino American community leaders. And of course, we reached out to 50 of them, 50 of the associations, and also the faith-based organizations, which is the church, and tried to identify the most vulnerable people here, the seniors, the unemployed, the underemployed, and of course, our youth. I'm not sure if you folks know, but Nevada is the #1 in the nation for homeless youth. And we wanted to ensure that our Filipino American youth were not going to be part of that statistics. So with our Bayanihan project, we needed to strategically and systematically employ a method that is going to be able to target all the people that we needed to service. So what we have done for the Bayanihan project is we established committees. We had the solicitation committee. The solicitation committee are the people who raise funds. And mind you, we raised thousands of money because we do not have, like what I said, an agency here to do that. This project was truly mobilized by volunteers. So we have a solicitation committee that had reached out also to Seafood City, Island Pacific for canned goods that we will be able to put in our food package distribution. So that's one component of the Bayanihan. We had the solicitation committee, then we had the purchasing committee. These are the people now that went out to purchase the goods, purchasing and inventory, and people needed to account of all these goods to make sure that they are indeed provided to the people who really needs it. And where do you put all this goods? We have a warehousing and a packaging committee as well, who put all these goods together before it was distributed. And we did also have a distribution and delivery committee. And you know that Southern Nevada is also big. So in Southern Nevada, we had divided it by zones, the east, the west, the north, and the south. And for each zone, we had leader for the delivery committee. And with the delivery committee, we also established media to document all the things that we're doing. And then we had the awards and appreciation celebration committee at the end of our project. So now Gloria will talk about another component of our COVID Balikbayan, not Balikbayan, Bayanihan project.
You know, our project, the Bayanihan project grew so much. And what has happened to us was we heard so much from our frontliners, the nurses, the caregivers, and the essential workers. And they were saying to us, my gosh, you know, as much as we are in the front lines, we are not given the necessary PPEs, you know, the personal protective equipment. There was a shortage, as it was around the country, as well as in our own state. So we knew we had to protect our healthcare workers, and we had to do something. So by April, we were running the meals, masks, and shields for frontliners program. Yeah. We were distributing to the frontliners. We were distributing lunches. We were distributing snacks. We were distributing the badly needed masks and shields to hospitals and the rehab transitional facilities to support our heroic frontliners. We had an amazing group of volunteers. You know, these folks really took it upon themselves to make masks, to sew masks, and also to work on the protective shields. I have got to show you this. This is an invention of one of our notable community leaders. When he did it on himself, it's made out of styrofoam. That is the pool float that children use in the pool, and he cuts it. And then this is the Xerox transparency. So with this, we were able to distribute it to the hospitals. And the Filipino American nurses who wear glasses, especially, we're so thankful because it really helped them a lot in the work that they're doing. We reached out to 11 hospitals in Las Vegas, Henderson, and Summerlin areas. And you know, in Las Vegas, the majority caregivers and nurses, frontliners are Filipino Americans. As a matter of fact, there's a hospital in Henderson called UMC. And you know, when you ask them, what does UMC stand for? They will completely, without hesitation, tell you it's University of Manila Central. They will tell you right away because it is 85% Filipino American nurses. You know, we distributed with these meals and PPEs reached over 1,000 frontliners. You know, as you can see from the hospital, they were so grateful. And you know, the nurses that we were able to reach did not hesitate and sent us their appreciation. And it was truly heartwarming. These are just some of the notes that we got from them immediately. It was just totally amazing, the reaction that we got from them. And this continued for a very long time. And, you know, as the sister from Arizona did say, we have a very active Philippine Nurses Association group here who has taken over this project now. In other words, it has not died. From the day we started this meals, mask, and shields program is continuing as we speak. And then I'd like to ask Amy now to also talk about the transitionals that were very much part of this program.
Okay, from the hospitals, then the clients go into the transitional or rehab centers. And because of the fact that there are so many transitional or rehabilitation centers in the Valley, we know we're not able to provide all the help that we wanted to do. Just like what Gloria said, we provided meals, masks, and shields to all the staff of that particular hospital. And in addition to that, we also provided food packages to the Filipino American workers. Because mind you, we were finding out that some of the spouses of these hospital workers, the nurses, the caregivers, were also smitten by the COVID. So we wanted to make sure that we were helping out. So we identified 5 facilities whose administrators are Filipino Americans. And so those are the places that we went, and we partnered with the Asian Community Development Council in providing all those. We also gave them cross necklaces, and we prayed with them. And you know, the Filipinos, we are tenacious because we have our faith in the Lord that carry us through this pandemic and unprecedented time. So we're very grateful for that. So I think, Gloria, I know that we did the mess up also. So if you want to.
Yes, you know, in all this, you know, we also remembered our own. We remembered our kababayans, and we did not want to leave them out. So we established a program called Mask Up Kababayan, and we distributed this Bayanihan mask. Look at it, this Bayanihan mask to our community. And you know, our community is really wonderful. We were at a table, and they would just pass us by. And you know, usually when there's a table, folks think you have to buy something, or you have to donate something, or give something. But when we told them, no, this is a service that we want to do for you, and it's free. Oh my gosh, our folks really came already, and the families came by, and we were able to equip them with this mask. And up to this day, we rise to the occasion, and we help them with masks and meals and shields. We do shields as well. You know, we would really be remiss if we did not, as I think Amy already mentioned them earlier. But the 2 establishments, Filipino American establishments, well, Filipino establishments that play a great role in our community is Seafood City and also Island Pacific. These 2 organizations have helped this community always in our time of need. They rise to the occasion. So I just want to give kudos to them as well. We would be remiss if we didn't. One of the services also that we were able to do for our community is to help folks who lost their jobs so that they would be able to get the benefits that they need. But now I see this special picture that Leo has flashed, it is Dr. Noel Fajardo, who is a renowned gastroenterologist in this community. You know, without having to ask, he just did this a month ago because he knew that there was still need in the community, and he was able to supply 400 families with rice, noodles, assorted canned goods. And as you can see, the folks who are putting this together are our community leaders who have volunteered their time. And we did a massive distribution that was very, very well accepted by the community. You know, our community really did not stop helping Nevadans only. When brought to our attention, we participated in a program called Tulong Sulong in the Philippines. And Amy will tell you about it.
Well, we did not, just like what Gloria said, we just did not stop in helping the Filipino American community here. And for Consul General Adelio, we went to the Philippines also and extend our help. These are donations from the Filipinos here in Nevada. And in partnership with Philippine Humanitarian Coalition and the National Federation of Filipino American Associations on the national level, we partnered also with the Feed the Hungry and Shared Aid Fund for Emergency Response, also known as SAFER, in the Philippines, to distribute 1-week meal for 100 families. And we provided it to Cavite and then to 2 barangays in Batangas, and also to Tondo and Smoky Mountain. Right now, we are still doing some projects at Payatas, the Taal. It's not Taal volcano, it's Taal. Sorry about that. And also Taal volcano, yeah. The Taal volcano victims and several families in Cebu. It's still ongoing right now, so we don't have pictures at the moment. So altogether, we had helped about 5,000 families here in Nevada and also in the Philippines. I would like to thank you folks for the opportunity given to us to at least let you know the things that we have been employing in response to the COVID-19. Maraming salamat po. God bless you, Ate Gloria.
Yes, you know, although the pandemic is not yet behind us, it has been inspiring and heartening to see our community mobilize during these unprecedented times. Our community has suffered loss of lives as well. We have PhilAm nurses in the front lines who have passed away. We have community leaders who have really passed away because of COVID. We have friends who have passed away. And so we are in these times really hoping to find fast solutions to what we experience. And also it was inspiring to hear Secretary Acosta to hear about what is being done in the Philippines as well. We have a long way to go, but we are vigilant. You know, Amy and I are really so proud of the spirit of bayanihan that lives in our community. We watch out for each other. We really care about each other. We realize that we may be homebound, but we are not helpless. We are Pinoy Vegas strong. We rise as one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Amy and Ms. Gloria, for giving us an overview about the profile and the situation of the Filipino American community in Nevada, and for also sharing with us the Bayanihan initiatives of your community. I am quite amazed with how well organized our Filipino American community in Nevada, how you were able to pull resources and mobilize people despite the restrictions and even the risk of getting the virus. So for that, thank you very much. So again, big thank you to all the Filipino community leaders for their compassion, dedication, initiatives to extend assistance to our kababayans. Beyond this pandemic, Filipino Americans have been facing day-to-day challenges, including legal issues and concerns. We are very lucky to have in this online ugnayan two respected speakers to enlighten and give us some legal advice on some common and relevant concerns of our Filipino Americans in the United States of America. Our first speaker to talk about this subject is a Los Angeles-based lawyer who brings more than 2 decades of litigation and trial practice through the firm he founded in 1991. He has represented and fought for the minorities and immigrants in the state and federal courts of California. In 2018, he was conferred the Presidential Pamana ng Pilipino Award by President Rodrigo Duterte in recognition of his exemplary efforts in championing the rights of the underprivileged and the minorities, serving the voice of Filipino Americans in the U.S. courtrooms. Let us all welcome Attorney C. Joe Sayas Jr. Good evening,
Maraming
Attorney
salamat
Sayas.
po. Just a second. Show me this. Okay. Oh, hello? Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that technical snafu. Maraming salamat po sa mga kaibigan natin sa Commission on Filipino Overseas for organizing this international webinar where we can share information involving issues affecting the Filipinos, not only here in the U.S. but also in the Philippines. So I'd like to join Gloria and Amy for that excellent update from Secretary Acosta. Thank you for doing that, Mr. Secretary. I think our leaders here in the state should take some notes on the way the stimulus is being planned here in the U.S. I think leaders like Pelosi and Secretary Mnuchin should take lessons from what you guys are doing in the Philippines. To talk about COVID-19, COVID-19, as you know, not only a medical crisis, but it is an economic crisis, a financial crisis which affects the breadwinners, the working men and women, with respect to how they're able to support themselves and their families. So it's fitting to note here at this point to talk about work and workers' rights, especially since immigrants like us, we move to a foreign country like the U.S. or other countries in search of better working conditions, hoping that we could, find a better future. So here in the U.S., how are we dealing with the pandemic? Yes. Workers and employees are affected by COVID-19 in many different ways. The worker may be sick with the virus. He contracted the virus either at work or outside work, elsewhere. Or there's another situation when the worker has to take care of family members who themselves have contracted COVID-19. Third situation may be workers who cannot work because they have reasonable fear of getting sick. Just want to let the folks know that you are not without help. Workers who contracted COVID-19 at work may avail of various state and federal protections. For instance, there's unemployment insurance for workers who contracted the virus while working, while in the course and scope of their employment. For workers who have contracted the virus outside of work, maybe they're doing something else, maybe they're doing something personal, joining super spreader events or any other thing outside work, they can avail of the various sick leave protections under both federal and state law. In California, and I should, there are the supplemental paid sick leave that supplemented the federal protection for COVID-19 workers. There's also the California Family Rights Act, and there's also the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act. I just want to go through this, enumerating all the various protections without going through the specifics for the sake of time. There's also the Families First Coronavirus Protection Act enacted by the U.S. Congress. So there's all this sick leave protection, which provides paid sick leave benefits to workers. In addition to those, there is also the general law protecting disabled employees against discrimination. Why do I say disabled? Disabled does not mean not only those people in crutches or in wheelchairs or sick in bed, but there are also the way we define disabled includes those who have a medical condition, which limits them to perform the essential functions of their living, like working, for instance. For instance, a person with COVID-19 can be classified as disabled. and therefore entitled to be protected against discrimination. What do we mean by discrimination? Discrimination may be something bad committed against the employee. It can include termination, it can include demotion or harassment because of disability. But under the law, especially here in California, under the Fair Employment Housing Act, employers have the duty to accommodate the disability. In other words, not do something bad against the employee because of their disability, or not do something bad against the COVID-19 worker because of his or her medical condition. Now, to guarantee this right to accommodate, there's the law which requires the employer to look for ways to afford equal opportunities for disabled employees to perform their work. In other words, there is the duty to basically look for ways by which the worker can be accommodated despite the fact that he or she is disabled from COVID-19. And what would be those examples of accommodation? They can include the sick leave that we just discussed. They can include in the sick leave, let's say if the Federal Medical Leave Act provides 90 days or 12 weeks, in certain cases, those sick leave benefits can be extended in order to, again, allow the worker to be able to resume or perform his or her work. Other types of accommodation may include having shortened hours or part-time work. Other accommodation may include working at home if the work can be done remotely. Lots of these requests have been made by employees to employers so that they can continue to work despite the fact that, for instance, the employee is under quarantine or suffering from any other medical condition or disability. Now, we also have the protections of the law for people who have pre-existing condition or are more vulnerable to COVID-19 because maybe they have diabetes or prior heart surgery or prior lung-related problems. This group of employees can have a right to refuse to perform certain work if it is risky. It puts them in such a danger to themselves or to other workers. Now, we've had situations where my firm got involved in a problem where a Filipino registered nurse got sick because she was a frontliner. She was attending to a COVID-19 patient, but there's an issue as to whether she was provided with the right PPE or the right personal protective equipment. Hospital providing only a surgical mask as opposed to the N95 mask, which is required for attending to COVID-19 patients. So basically, we coordinate our work with the government agency, the Occupational Safety Health Agency, or the OSHA, OSHA, to at least investigate that particular hospital and see whether there's any safety violation. They found out, hospital was cited, and they found out that not enough procedures, the safety procedures were followed in light of CDC guidelines. Failure to provide the adequate personal protective equipment. In that situation, there is a justification for the employee to refuse to work until yeah, sorry about that. There's just, I think I froze here. Okay. Okay. All right. So we're getting back. Okay. Right. In addition to um, those protections provided by law to COVID-19 patients, there is also what we also experience in these days is litigation, ongoing litigation involving underpaid wages to workers, where people are paid below minimum wage, or people are paid or not paid the right amount of overtime because of certain situations, certain conditions. For instance, a domestic worker, for instance, can be paid a fixed rate regardless of the number of hours worked. In the Philippines, we call it pakyao. But under the law, each and every hour has to be paid at a minimum wage. So many of our kababayans have been victims to this payment of a fixed rate, and therefore resulting in an underpayment of their wages. You also do not receive the right amount of wages because of sometimes undercounting all hours worked. For example, a situation would be when a nurse, for instance, who would work 12 hours in a hospital, check in at 7 a.m. in the morning, leaves at 7:30, check out at 7:30 in the evening, but would return back after checking out or after clocking out, and to do additional 2 hours of work every shift just to be able to finish her reporting. So those 2 hours become uncounted or undercounted, and therefore not paid. And if this goes on every day for an employee or a nurse who work like 3 years or 4 years, which is what the law allows recovery for, it becomes significant. It becomes significant. Also, we received several instances or complaints involving misclassification of employees as independent contractors. Here, if a worker is classified as an independent contractor, he or she loses the benefit of minimum wage or overtime, or the worker doesn't get the health insurance protection that other workers or other employees are getting. and therefore ultimately receive less in terms of wages. That worker is also not entitled to overtime if that worker is classified as an independent contractor. So many employers have gone through several of these tricks or techniques in order to underpay our Filipino workers. And sometimes, you know, matiisin ng Filipino, sometimes they accept that reality. Of course, when they come to us, we basically do what's necessary for them. We go to court and enforce their rights under the law. Okay. Now, we also see a continuing complaints on sex discrimination. That may include offensive touching, may include sex assault right in the workplace, or even offensive communications through telephone texts or emails or verbal abuse that may constitute a hostile environment in the workplace. You still have, if you believe that, still complaints on discrimination against race or national origin. I have had cases when Hispanics are belittled or Filipinos are called lazy because they're Filipinos. Of course, those are unlawful, and those become the basis of major lawsuits against the employer. And there's, again, we go back to disability and medical condition. Okay. An example would be just this recent case that we're having. We have a frontline healthcare employee who contracted, who after 9 years of service to the hospital contracted COVID-19, and she requested accommodations. She requested leave, an additional leave, but the employer basically told her, yes, if you don't return by a certain date, you better find another job. Okay, that's illegal. That's unlawful. So that's an ongoing case against the hospital for that, and that's what constitutes disability discrimination. And while we're in the subject of disability or discrimination, my assistant basically put this cartoon, include this in the PowerPoint. It's an elephant, African elephant, consulting an attorney, and says, Santa wouldn't employ me because I'm an African elephant, not a reindeer. So I want to sue him for discrimination. So basically that, it illustrates the evils of discrimination. Even Santa, of course, it shows that even Santa himself is not exempted from this anti-discrimination laws, and to be light about it. We also have handled human trafficking cases. As you know, human trafficking is deprivation of personal liberty of another with the intent to obtain forced labor. It continues to be a problem in the U.S., with the Philippines as the foreign country of origin, which has the highest number of human trafficking victims, at least as of 2018, as reported by my friends from the Human Trafficking Legal Center. So there's still challenges brought by COVID-19, the workplace, brought by discrimination, and while on the subject of while we're still on the subject of discrimination, we have also, in a way, sometimes see an interplay of civil rights with with disability discrimination. For instance, we have handled a case involving a we have handled a case involving a young Filipino who has a mental condition. He's schizophrenic, who was playing with a knife, and being harmless in the kiosk, he was shot by a police officer. So I thought it's relevant in the age of Mr. Floyd, in the age of Black Lives Matter. I believe that's something to give particular importance to the rights of disabled. Here was a situation wherein the police arrived knowing that there's some mental issue on this individual, but decided to utilize force against this mentally disabled individual. Okay. And then what I want to do is, I'm sorry, there's this technical snafu that I have. I can't control the pace here of the PowerPoint. But what's important to remember though is that workers have rights, and for Filipinos, we should do something to be informed of our rights. We should get help. And don't be concerned about your problem being exposed to others, because confidential help is available, and there's no out-of-pocket expense. You're not talking to an immigration lawyer, you're not talking to a divorce lawyer, where you have to pay right away for some people. But for employment lawyers, if there's an issue of discrimination, there's an issue of unlawful termination or wage claims. These employment lawyers do not require payment upfront. There's no out-of-pocket expense. So as civil rights leader once said, if you see something wrong, say something, do something. So our message, or my message to our kababayan is, you got to do something, pick up the phone, consult with experienced legal counsel, and assert your rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Joe. Indeed, in this time of pandemic, the workers' rights and well-being, as well as their health and safety, should not be overlooked, but rather protected by the government. And we couldn't agree more that we should always be informed and aware of our rights at all times. Our next speaker on legal concerns is no other than Honorary Consul Audie De Castro. His jurisdiction covers all of the San Diego County, California, where over 200,000 Filipino Americans reside. In addition to promoting diplomacy, trade, and tourism, his responsibilities include providing consular services and protection to Filipino citizens on a daily basis. Professionally, he is a corporate lawyer and founded the De Castro PC, a law firm in downtown San Diego. He is the president of the Pag-asa Law Clinic, a nonprofit organization that provides legal access to Filipino immigrants. Good evening, Honorary Consul De Castro.
Good evening. And thank you, Mr. Secretary and Consul General Cruz, for having me here tonight. It's always a pleasure to see both of you. And it's always been an honor for me to be representing the government here in San Diego County. I'll be talking about the legal issues in the Philam community, If you can turn to the first slide. I think before I do that, I think it's important to put this into some numerical context. As you mentioned earlier, there's approximately 1.6 million Filipino Americans in California, 4 million in the United States. Specifically in San Diego County, there are 205,000 based on the latest census, making us the second largest ethnic community behind Latinos. And the highest concentrations are in the southern part of the county, which is the National City, Chula Vista, and Paradise Hills. And there's a reason why I'm saying that, if you can go to the next slide. We're here in the context of COVID, so I want to talk about San Diego County in a snapshot. There's over 3 million residents. There have been 53,000 cases of COVID-19 as of October 19th. That was just 3 days ago. Reported cases of Asian infections were 2,461, which is 5.6% of the reported cases. It doesn't tell us, the facts don't tell us how many are Filipinos, but Filipinos are far more of more than a majority of the Asian populations in the county, to put that into context. Now, the key South Bay areas where Filipino reside are hit the hardest. Again, that's National City, Paradise Hills, and the South Bay, specifically Chula Vista and close to the border. The infection rates are double or higher. So you can extrapolate from this that we probably have a fair amount of Filipinos representing the Asian community that are infected. Now, what we have done here in San Diego County pre-COVID was to establish a free Filipino law clinic in 2020. Now, COVID impacted the law clinic because we had an initial launch date of March 2020. But because of COVID, we had to push it all the way to August 2020. The delay, of course, was caused by COVID-19. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now, I should talk about what inspired the idea. After the 2016 presidential election, there were reported raids, immigration raids by ICE. And there were no legal clinics that targeted Filipinos. And I can tell you that I received calls from undocumented immigrants very afraid of what might happen to them. There were legal existence that targeted the Latino community, but none for the second largest community in San Diego County. So community leaders gathered around, expressed concerns, and we talked about developing that need, but it took a while to formulate the idea. Now, in 2019, I had the opportunity to meet Secretary Acosta with the assistance of LA Consul General Cruz. And they both came to San Diego, and I broached the idea with them. And I want to thank them for inspiring me and giving me the confidence to open this clinic. Without their support, their moral support, and the ideas they gave me, I wouldn't have had the courage to do that. So my office, the Philippine Consulate, actually formed the organization as a California entity, received 501c3 tax-exempt status, and a group of Philam leaders joined the board, and volunteers joined to help. As you can see from the slide, it's comprised of activists, interns, and lawyers who are doing this without any charge. And it's financed by the Philcom community. We can't have an organization that is not self-sustaining, especially a legal organization. Now, why did we call it Pag-asa? Well, we don't just want to be a law clinic, but we want to provide hope to the community, because a lot of the concerns people have cause them stress. And even if you can't always help a client, you could at least give them the knowledge they need to help themselves, or to at least know where they stand. And knowledge gives people hope. And that's what we wanted to emphasize in this law clinic. And we also didn't want to just practice law, but we wanted to do it in a compassionate way and a holistic way, which meant that we're not just going to give them legal needs, but we want to collaborate with organizations that can also help them. So for example, there's a Samahan Health Clinic that provides free health services. We can refer them to that clinic, and they've agreed to collaborate with us. Now, this next screen shows us who are the team members, the initial team members of Pag-asa, consisting of these interns, lawyers, and volunteers. Just so you know, we're not making this all up. This is the team. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we can't be an organization that isn't that unless we're self-sustaining. And we are very grateful that we got support from the community. And these are just the initial supporters. Subsequent to our grand opening in August, we received more financial support from other organizations, and we're applying for grants. We want to be realistic about what we can do for people, and we can't do it without money. Next slide, please. Now, COVID, when we first started this, of course, as you know, we wanted to start helping undocumented immigrants because of the raids after the presidential election. We also knew that there was a lot of domestic violence issues where people were ashamed to get help. So we wanted to provide an avenue for them to get help without feeling ashamed. And we knew there were housing issues because San Diego has one of the most expensive housing. But post-COVID sort of changed things. First, as you know, we had to delay our opening, but we also have to provide more telelegal services instead of on-site services. If you can go to the next slide, please. Now, housing is going to become probably the one issue we may have to put our attention to more in the next coming months. And why? Because housing in San Diego is very expensive. Median home price is over $700,000. Average rental price of a 1,000 square foot apartment is over $2,200 per month. COVID-19, of course, as you know, has closed businesses and employment has increased. California and local government implemented moratoriums on evictions, some of which have ended already, but that hasn't really eliminated rent. It's only deferred rent. That has to be repaid at some point. So of course, the logic follows that it's more likely that tenants will be eventually evicted. And Filipinos, especially those working in lesser paying jobs, will need legal assistance. And those lesser paying jobs pay what minimum wage in California is, which is $12 an hour. And that's basically less than what one can pay on the rent. And Pag-asa Clinic is preparing for this surge. Next slide, please. And as you might expect, because people have to stay home more frequently, because of the stresses, we think domestic violence is likely to worsen. In fact, one of the partner agencies that we work with has already reported more cases of domestic violence within the Filipino community than they have seen in years. Next slide. Now, of course, we're not going to forget our undocumented Filipinos. They deserve help. There's no precise measurement as to how many are in the United States because many, of course, don't want to report that they're undocumented. But if you look at the estimates and reports from varying agencies, it's estimated there may be 300 to 800,000 undocumented immigrants in the United States, Filipinos, and in California, 140,000. And if you extrapolate that number, there could be 20 to 45,000 in San Diego County with one law clinic to help them. Now, people might ask, why should we help undocumented immigrants? Well, besides the humanitarian reasons, if you look at the economics, they contribute to our economy. They pay reportedly $4.5 billion in federal income taxes just in California. And they have paid $2.5 billion in state income tax in California. Yet, they weren't eligible to receive some of the aid that the federal government provided to a lot of US citizens during COVID-19. And we only have 3 volunteer attorneys and some legal interns to assist them, but we will be there for them. The next slide here is how you can contact our clinic if you need help. And I wanted to end my presentation, if you go to the next slide, very simply, it's a difficult time, but we gotta have hope. And we gotta take care of each other. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Honorary.
Thank you po.
We are always grateful for your continuing assistance to the Filipinos in San Diego And we commend your constant coordination with the Philippine Consulate General in Los Angeles, especially during these trying times. Now, before we continue with our discussion, let us be serenaded by Miss Dawn Bande with the song entitled Manila.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat dyan. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you po.
Magandang tanghali naman sa mga kasama namin dito sa Manila. Ilang beses na kitang nilayasan, iniwanan at ibang pinuntahan. Parang first love na mahirap talagang malimutan. Ikaw lamang ang aking binabalikan. Manila, Manila, I keep coming back to Manila. Simply no place like Manila. Manila, I'm coming home. I walk the streets of San Francisco. I tried the rides in Disneyland. Played with a million koalas in Sydney. Somehow I feel that I don't belong. Hinahanap kita, Manila. Ang ingay mong kay sarap sa tenga. Mga jeepney mong nagliliparan. Mga tanawin mong nagkagandahan. Take me back in your arms, Manila. Promise me you'll never let go. Promise me you'll never let go. Manila, Manila, I keep coming back to Manila. Simply no place like Manila. Manila, I'm coming home. Somehow I feel that I don't belong. Hinahanap kita, Manila. Ang ingay mong kay sarap sa tenga. Mga jeepney mong nagliliparan. Mga tanawin mong nagkagandahan. Take me back in your arms, Manila. Promise me you'll never let go. Promise me you'll never let go. Promise me you'll never let go. Manila, Manila, miss you like hell. Manila, no place in the world like Manila. I'm coming home to stay. Shout out sa lahat ng mga gusto nang umuwi.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dawn, for that performance. Welcome back to the second half of the online Ugnayan sa Los Angeles. During our first half of the discussion, we've talked about the Philippine government response as well as the Filipino-American Community Initiative during this pandemic. Our speakers today have also discussed common legal concerns of our Filipino Americans. However, this online ugnayan would not be complete without talking about one of the most and current relevant issues in the United States, which is the US Census. To give us an update on this and its impact to the Filipino American community, we have with us Mr. Eric Lachica. Mr. Lachica was recently a Filipino Community Partnership Specialist of the United States Census Bureau in Los Angeles County. For his efforts and accomplishment, Eric received a certificate of recognition for the LA City's Board of Public Works. He served as the executive director of the American Coalition for Filipino Veterans, which led a successful campaign that passed 5 bills in the US Congress that provided more than 300 million US dollars in total benefits for the Filipino veterans and their dependents. Welcome to the CFO Online Ugnayan, Mr. Lachica.
Gusto kayo? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Maliwanag ba?
sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, and thank you for convening this ugnayan. Is my presentation handa na ba? Is it? Can we? Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm a former partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. I was assigned in Los Angeles to do community outreach sa ating mga Pilipino, and we had a very good team of Pinay outreach partnership specialists, just like Ivy Daulo, who was my outreach specialist in the historic Filipino town, in the San Fernando Valley, Long Beach areas. So I just like to say thank you so much to the CFO and to Conjen Del Cruz for inviting me. I'd like to recognize the efforts of the consulate and the staff for promoting the census with the steady flow of your customers at the consulate on Wilshire Boulevard. I know you guys had a big territory to service. You know, I think under your jurisdiction, probably a million plus Filipinos, including Nevada and Arizona, and of course, Southern California. So I just like to put that. I would also like to say that this is a once in a decade count, and many community groups and many of our stakeholders are waiting for the results, and hopefully they'll be ready by next year. I'm being optimistic, of course, a breakdown of how many Pinoys live in United States. Just next slide, please. And it's very important, as you probably know, all the planning, budgeting, investment by businesses, marketing studies are based on the official numbers that will be coming out next year. The President of the United States is waiting for this information by the results of our decennial census by New Year's Eve, of course, for the apportionment of for the Congress. So the value of the census is known to all. Next slide. Next. All right. For those in the United States, you probably received this questionnaire if you haven't answered online the census. It was the first time ever, and there were no questions about citizenship or immigration, and any newborn infants who were born on or before April 1st, 2020 should have been counted. I know many of our snowbird Filipino Americans who visited the Philippines were stranded, and that's an issue that probably we'll have to deal with. And I met several who came back after the April 1st benchmark. Next. And these are the estimated numbers based on the 2010 US Census and the American Community Survey sampling. The numbers were mentioned earlier by Conjen and by others, like Audi. There are more than 4 million estimated. That includes foreign-born Filipinos and US-born Filipino Americans. In California, 1.6 million. And of course, Greater LA has more than 500,000, 106,000 Filipinos who identify themselves as Filipinos. LA City has 145,000. Next. And these are the results. As of yesterday, I listened to the news conference by our my former bosses in Washington, D.C. We've reached out to 99.98 of the U.S. households. 152 million residential addresses were reached. That meant that we got the information for those places. We don't count offices, just for your information. And 67% of those households self-responded. They did it online, by mail, or on the internet. First time ever we've done the census online. Next. Why? It's in the Constitution, and many of you know we're required to count everyone who lives in the United States, and the purposes are very clear. The apportionment of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, redistricting by local officials in the state of California, for example, in Nevada, for their local state officials. The distribution of funds is very important. As Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles said, we missed one Filipino resident in LA. That would be a loss of at least $2,000 per year. Since the census only happens every 10 years, that would have been a loss of at least $20,000 of our taxes not going back to our neighborhoods. So of course, we want to count everyone because everyone matters, and that's part of democracy. Next. As I said earlier, these results will, everyone is waiting for this numbers, and the president should get this by December 31st, 2020. Next. I'm basically here to say maraming salamat to all our partners. I personally have about 400 organizations or leaders I've worked with over the past 16 months in LA County. By the way, LA County is the hardest to count area in the country. And maraming TNT, as they say, as mentioned by Audi. That was our biggest challenge. And I'd like to thank all our friends and family. Most of my family members, my sisters, my daughter lives in California and LA. So I'd like to say thank you to them for getting the word out, especially our church leaders, the Filipino ministry. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles was crucial in getting the word out by posting newsletters, their website. And of course, this photo right here is the consular staff in Los Angeles handing out promotional materials and goodie bags, so to speak, to their clients in LA. I was surprised that 175 customers average visit the consulate for their needs documentation. I'd like to also say thank you. Next slide. Okay, to the Philam Chamber of Commerce. They have so many folks who've helped us over the past 16 months. Even Joanne Fields of San Diego had the caravan come to our events in LA, and we appreciate the caravan boosting enthusiasm among our community leaders, especially yung mga top Filipino supermarkets, yung Tambuli, yung Seafood City. And I'm glad that earlier this evening we had Aki Soriano from the Filipino Workers Center. This is a photograph of her group, who spearheaded the Filipino Complete Count Committee of LA County. So maraming salamat, Aki, and to Ian of the PWC for helping and hosting us for many of the events, uh, especially with my partner, Ivy Daulo, who was super woman, okay, in getting the word out to different audiences from Filipino student groups at the various campuses and to work liaison with our Asian American allies. Next slide. Ayun po, Seafood City, yan po si Ivy with our Census Caravan, with our Filipino Complete Count Committee, with PWC volunteers, our Filipino community leaders, our national NAFA Federation led by Marianne and Leon Omega. I'd like to mention them. The Filipino Rotary Club of Historic Town, Filipino Town, SIPA. I just want to give them a credit since this will be recorded. Next slide. Ayan po, these are only about 30 of groups that we work with. I just also like to mention the work of Jessica Calosa, who's a commissioner on the LA Board of Public Works, for organizing helping us with the caravan and getting the city, the mayor's office, to help us promote the outreach in historic Filipino town in Los Angeles. So maraming salamat po sa inyo, sa lahat, and to Conjen Del Cruz, hopefully we can get the results early next year. This will be a big event to celebrate with especially with the DFA, who have helped promote this with the other posts, especially in San Francisco consulate. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, to CFO and to all the great staff you guys have there sa Manila.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eric Lachica. It is always a delight to see you, and we greatly appreciate your efforts in making sure each and every Filipino is counted in the U.S. Census. Now, there is there's also one question from our Facebook Live. So the question is about apostille certificates. So since it's COVID and appointments are hard to get at the Philippine Consulate General, we go to the California Notary Public and use apostille certificates. However, some banks and government offices don't honor it in the Philippines. So what you can do is tell your bank or that government office or whichever government office that is, or whichever office that is, to email the Philippine Consulate General so that they can ensure that your document is authenticated. So there. Now, the coronavirus outbreak has resulted to several countries imposing lockdowns and border restrictions, which affected the mobility of people across the globe. In order to curb the spread of the disease, the Philippine government has also restricted the exit and entry of foreign and Filipino travelers. To inform us about these travel restrictions and discuss its effects on US-based Filipinos, we have with us Immigration Officer Carlo Magno Salazar of the Philippine Bureau of Immigration. Mr. Salazar has been working with the Philippine Bureau of Immigration for 20 years. He worked with the computer section of the Bureau and was assigned in several sub-port offices in Lawag, Clark, Cebu, Makati, and in the main office. He was also assigned to Alien Registration Division. Currently, Mr. Salazar is assigned at NAIA Terminal 1 as Deputy Head of Operations. Now, welcome, Mr. Salazar.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank Secretary Acosta for inviting the Bureau of Immigration in this informative ugnayan. Let me begin with a presentation through PowerPoint, no? Regarding the restrictions on travel affecting our overseas Filipinos, no? Hold on. Yeah, okay, sorry. So at the start of this pandemic, as early as February 3, the Bureau of Immigration, uh, through the pronouncement of President Rodrigo Duterte, implemented travel restrictions to limit the entry of passengers who are possible carriers of the COVID virus, particularly those traveling from COVID-stricken countries. So, as early as February, it banned entry of travelers from China and its special administrative regions. That's where the pandemic started, right? So, uh, what was included? Let us look into the document. It temporarily banned entry of any person, regardless of nationality, except Filipino citizens and holders of permanent resident visa issued by the Philippine government directly coming from China and its special administrative regions. So you can see that the government, in its effort to protect its citizens, started to place the lockdowns uh, that is needed to control. So on 19 March 2020, another issuance from the Department of Foreign Affairs restricting the travel. So this time, they have decided to suspend the visa-free privileges and other visa waiver agreements. So even the Executive Order 408, which is the admission that we use for visa-free nationals, including American passport holders. So including the balikbayan entry privileges was suspended. So this is the rationale declaring a state of calamity throughout the Philippines, and the need for us to strictly limit the entries. So who are exempted? Only foreign government and international organization officials accredited to the Philippines, and foreign spouses and children of Filipino nationals. Notwithstanding, this is important, this paragraph, notwithstanding the foregoing, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs or the Undersecretary for Civilian Security and Consular Concerns may exempt on a case-to-case basis foreign nationals otherwise covered by this temporary suspension. So our consulates and the Department of Foreign Affairs may exempt from those who are not eligible to enter. So come August 3 of this year, another Foreign Service Circular was issued to be more specific on the dependence of a Philippine national. So foreign minor children and foreign children with special needs regardless of age, and foreign parents of minor Filipino children and of Filipino children with special needs regardless of age. So on this Foreign Service Circular, it has become clearer that those who fall under these categories must possess an appropriate visa. So they must have at least an entry visa, a 9A, or if they have an existing and valid immigration status in the Philippines, they will be allowed, admitted with that visa. So let me just emphasize, all foreign passport holders must have entry visa. This is still ongoing. And also, those who have existing valid visas who are spouses or dependents of Philippine nationals, we will honor their existing and valid visas. as long as they fall under those categories. So there are only 3 proofs that we accept, proofs of Philippine citizenship, so we can allow you to enter. The first one is a valid Philippine passport, an identification certificate issued normally by the consulate or the Bureau of Immigration, depending on where you applied for your dual citizenship, and certificate of reacquisition, retention of Philippine citizenship. So this is the basis of the Immigration Operations Order on the proof of Philippine citizenship that is acceptable with our immigration officers at the counters. So now let's talk about the Filipinos outbound travel. In 6 July 2020, the Interagency Task Force issued a resolution after many months following the lockdown to ease the travel of outbound Filipinos. So you can see here at number 3, the non-essential outbound travel of Filipinos shall be subject to the following conditions. So round-trip ticket, if traveling as a tourist, adequate travel and health insurance to cover booking and accommodation expenses if stranded, and hospitalization in case of infection in such amount as may be determined by the Department of Tourism. So also, we would need to know if the destination country accepts your travel. Then, in July 18 of this year, this news article came out, and there's a sudden increase in COVID cases. So the government responded with this by issuing another resolution, now limiting again the outbound travel to essential travelers. So no tourism again. And we were tasked to also get from the passengers an execution of declaration acknowledging the risk involved in traveling. So they restricted once more. But then, just this month, on October 15, another resolution, IATF Reso number 79, is allowing again the outbound travel of Filipinos with the following conditions. So again, the round trip tickets, adequate travel and health insurance, and then the same documentary requirement of an execution of a Bureau of Immigration declaration acknowledging the risks. And then as a pre-boarding requirement, a negative antigen test result taken within the 24 hours before departure. Now, there's another issuance of an IATF reso just yesterday, removing this antigen requirement, pre-boarding requirement. So you can understand how dynamic our rules are, keeps on changing. So we must always be on the lookout for issuances. So here is our coronavirus cases since yesterday, 363,000. And we rank 20th on the worldometer COVID cases. So that's it. I think that ends my presentation. You may get in touch with us, with the Bureau of Immigration, through these email addresses. And you may also reach me through my email address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salazar, for presenting the ongoing exit and entry travel restrictions that is being implemented by the Philippine government. Aside from Mr. Salazar, we would like to also acknowledge the presence via Zoom of Ms. Timotea Barizo, Head of Travel Control and Enforcement Unit, as well as Ms. Rosalia Acuna, Chief of Airport Operations Section of the Philippine Bureau of Immigration. Thank you for joining us here. The COVID-19 pandemic has taken its toll not only to our overseas Filipino workers, but also among other Filipino immigrants. In the US, the effect of the pandemic is also felt by the Filipino Exchange Visitors Program participants. To further explain the Philippines' participation to the Exchange Visitors Program of the US and how CFO is providing assistance to Filipino EVP participants affected by the coronavirus pandemic, we have with us Director Marita Del Rosario Apatad of the CFO Project Management Division.
Thank you, Jo. A pleasant day to everyone. Secretary Acosta, Consul General Adelio Angelito Cruz, Undersecretary Naik, Honorary Consul Odi De Castro, our distinguished resource persons. Magandang gabi po sa ating mga kababayan who are tuned in from the US, and magandang hapon naman po dito sa mga nasa Pilipinas. I am here to briefly discuss the participation of Filipino nationals to the Exchange Visitor Program of the USA, or the EVP. It may interest the public to know that aside from our overseas Filipino workers, as mentioned by Jo, which formed the bulk of repatriates during the COVID-19 pandemic, EVP participants are some of those greatly affected by the pandemic. The Philippine government has sought to address these issues that have arisen due to the crisis, as well as other lingering concerns affecting the participation of Filipinos. The EVP is an international exchange program of the United States to increase mutual understanding between its people and the people of other countries. Its establishment and development can be traced as early as 1948. The composition of the committee has evolved over the years in response to the changing needs of the country. While it is the CFO who normally deals with the public, since it serves as the committee's secretariat, the present-day composition of the committee has 11 government agency bodies chaired by the Department of Foreign Affairs. As such, all decisions on the participation of Filipinos are done as a collegial body. Essentially, the Philippine participation to the US program has paved the way for opportunities to Filipinos to be exposed to the American way of life and to providing the necessary skills, knowledge, and expertise for the growth of the Philippines. Thousands of Filipinos have participated in the program over the years. The CFO started registering those leaving the country holding J1 visas in 1998, and we can see how the numbers have been steadily increasing over the years. It is also apparent that most J1 visa holders are participating in shorter-term programs, such as those under the summer work and travel, intern, and trainee categories. The number of teachers is also significant, and most of them specialize in math, science, English, and SPED. There are also research scholars, scientists, and participants under the categories of international and government visitors, which are being facilitated by the U.S. Embassy in Manila and are U.S. government funded. It must be emphasized that the J1 visa is an exchange program visa and is not a working visa. While some categories offer remuneration for the duration of a program, participation to the program is temporary and should not be taken as a means for employment. And the following should be noted. Contracts were not reviewed by the Department of Labor and Employment. Hence, these may not meet the minimum requirements set forth by the Philippine government. Participants are not qualified also to receive benefits provided for by the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, which became apparent during the mass repatriation of Filipinos during COVID. And there is the requirement to return home to the Philippines and the offer of employment is not a reason to waive this requirement. So these are requirements set forth by the US government. Participants to the program are under the obligation to return to their home country for a period of 2 years after programs end. This ensures that the objective of the program to transfer skills and knowledge obtained in the US is achieved. The program has definitely been beneficial to the participants and to the country in general. However, there are concerns and issues that we have to address in order to maximize the benefits of the program for the Philippines. There have been reports on exorbitant fees paid by the participants and misrepresentations by agencies which have resulted to unmet expectations, which bring about complaints on the part of the participants when already in the US. Since agencies are not regulated by the government, they may be remiss in their responsibilities and obligations to the participants, and local agencies do not have any accountability with the participants should they encounter problems on site. And as I've mentioned earlier, program participants have not been spared from the COVID-19. Hundreds were forced to go back to the Philippines when companies were unable to continue supporting them. Various concerns were brought to the attention of the EVP committee and received by the CFO, including early termination of contracts, lack of emergency funding for housing and daily needs, airfare tickets, accommodation assistance upon arrival in the Philippines due to the mandatory quarantine protocols, program extensions or reassignments, requests for refunds from US sponsoring and host institutions, and lack of support and accountability of local representatives of US sponsors. Since March 2020, the Commission has been providing assistance to the Filipinos in the form of accommodation and food while they are on quarantine. As of October 15, 2020, 556 individuals have been supported, 441 of which are EVP participants, and there are still a number who are still abroad and waiting to be repatriated. Because of these concerns, the entire program is now under review. The EVP committee has implemented a temporary moratorium on the participation of Filipinos to the EVP. And while this is in place, the Philippines is reviewing policies and agreements to be able to request for the best possible arrangements for Filipinos. We have seen how unceremoniously cut they were during the onset of the pandemic, and we would like to see them better protected the next time they return to the US if and when the threat of the virus has significantly died down. The moratorium basically disallows the participation of Filipinos to the program temporarily, effective May 25, 2020, and will be in place for 1 year. During this time, third-party intermediaries must not start or continue processing applications for any J-1 visa program. Exceptions were made for US-funded programs. These were guaranteed by the US government. And it is also to be noted that Philippine government promulgates its own policies in consideration of the welfare of its own citizens and are not dependent on the US. Lastly, we are very much concerned about sending Filipinos to exchange programs or letting them stay beyond the program duration at this time that the infection rate in the US has not abated, which includes those requesting to waive the residency requirement. Again, we wish to emphasize that this is temporary, and the EVP Committee of the Philippines is continuously and regularly meeting and reviewing policies related to the program. And we have also noted all the concerns that we have seen in the chat box and FB comments, and these will all be taken up during Exchange Visitor Program Committee meetings for review. Some of the discussions being worked out at the moment is a government-to-government facilitation on the participation of Filipinos in the program. This way, we do away with third-party intermediaries who have for many years pursued their own interests, especially profit, at the expense of the regular Filipino. We assure you that we are tirelessly working to ensure that the experience of Filipinos and the benefit of the program to the country are fully maximized. And we thank everyone for their cooperation and patience as the whole EVP committee works on ensuring that the welfare and well-being of participants are protected. Mabuhay po tayong lahat at maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Director Apatad, for your presentation on the EVP program, as well as the issues concerning our EVP participants in this time of pandemic. For 40 years, the Commission on Filipinos Overseas have been formulating policies and providing programs for the promotion of the interests, rights, and welfare of our overseas Filipinos, as well as strengthening their ties with the Philippines. To share with us some of these programs and services of the Commission for our overseas Filipinos, we have with us Mr. Rodrigo Garcia Jr. of the CFO Policy Planning and Research Division.
Magandang araw at gabi po sa kanilang lahat. I am pleased to highlight some of the CFO programs and projects that may interest you. First off, may we invite you to join the Presidential Awards for Filipino Individuals and Organizations Overseas, or PAFIO. The PAFIO was established through Executive Order Number 498 in December 1991. This is a biennial award conferred on distinguished Filipino individuals and organizations in recognition of their outstanding contributions to national development efforts. The awards are also conferred on foreign individuals and organizations that provide assistance to the country or advance the cause of Filipino communities overseas. The awards have been extended to 485 individuals and organizations overseas from 52 countries and territories since its inception. The PAFIO has 4 award categories. First is the Lingkod sa Kapwa Pilipino Award, which is conferred on Filipino individuals or organizations for their exceptional contributions to the progress and development of the Philippines. The second is the Pamana ng Pilipino Award, which is conferred on Filipinos overseas who, in exemplifying the talent and industry of the Filipino, have brought the country honor and recognition through excellence and distinction in the pursuit of their work or profession. Third category is the Banaag Award, which is conferred on Filipino individuals or organizations for their contributions that have significantly benefited the cause of overseas Filipino communities. And the fourth category is the Kaanib ng Bayan Award, which is conferred on foreign individuals or organizations for their significant contribution to Philippine progress and development. If you know an overseas Filipino or a foreigner deserving of any of these awards, the nomination has been extended until December 31 of this year. All nominations must be endorsed first by the Philippine Embassy or Consulate that has jurisdiction over the place of residence or operation of the individual or organization you are nominating. For the nomination form and guidelines, you may visit our website and do like our Facebook page. The CFO has also another award called the Migration Advocacy and Media Awards, or MAM. The MAM Awards aims to recognize the significant role of the media in raising public awareness on issues related to Filipino migration. The MAM Awards have been conferred to 18 media institutions, practitioners, and advocates from 20 countries, 9 of which came from the US. 20 Best Media Works won the MAM Awards in 2019. The awards consist of 6 categories. We have radio journalism, print journalism, television journalism, film media, advertisement, as well as interactive media. For more information about the MAM Awards, please do visit our website and like our Facebook page. In 1989, the CFO initiated a program that would systematically manage donations from overseas Filipinos and direct them toward enhancing local development initiatives. This pioneering government effort is the Lingkod sa Kapwa Pilipino, or Linkapil. Also known as the Link for Philippine Development, Linkapil facilitates the transfer of various forms of assistance from Filipinos or other donors overseas to support projects in livelihood development, education, health-related activities, and small-scale infrastructure. Since 1990, almost 3.42 billion, that's billion, worth of donations were channeled through the CFO Linkapil program. In 2019 alone, the CFO facilitated almost 25 million of donations to the country. The amount received directly benefited 38,000 individuals from 24 provinces, including the Greater Manila area. Overseas Filipinos who wish to help their community back home may visit the CFO Linkapil website and also its Facebook page. Lastly, we also have a program for our second and third generation Filipino youth. First known as Lakbay Aral in 1983, the youth leaders in the diaspora, or ULID, allows our Filipino youth overseas to rediscover their Filipino roots and appreciate the richness and diversity of their heritage in a two-week cultural immersion in the country. The ULID is open to all Filipinos abroad, ages 15 to 30 years old, who would like to learn more about the country. Last year, we worked together with the Philippine Consulate in Chicago and successfully conducted the US Midwest ULID program with 14 Filipino youth participants. Here are some of their testimonials. If you're interested to join in the next ULID, do send us an email. For more information about this program, we also invite you to visit our website and please like our Facebook page. And those are just some of our exciting programs. Maraming salamat po sa ikinig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garcia. We truly appreciate the efforts of CFO and the programs it has in assisting and recognizing Filipinos around the world. Now, Director Ivy Maravillas of the CFO Migrant Integration and Education Division will also be on hand to answer questions on frontline services for immigrants, Ms. Janice Ramos for anti-trafficking concerns, and Attorney Cerces Cortel, the Head Executive Assistant of Secretary Acosta. To all our distinguished speakers, thank you very much for your presentations. Now we will be entertaining questions from our online participants. Some of them have already posted their questions while the sessions are ongoing, but for those who haven't, you can type your questions addressed to the resource speaker in the Ask Question button if you are watching us via Zoom. Now, if you are with us via Facebook Live, you can simply use the comment section to type in your questions. Now, for the first question we have is, and give me a second, we have technical difficulties. Okay, so the first question we have is from Ms. Gisela Crisologo. She asked, I think this question is directed to the Consul General. What are the procedures in applying for dual citizenship, and when will be the easing of travel restrictions of former Filipinos or foreigners in entering the Philippines? Consul General?
Thank you, Chris. First of all, for those who are interested in applying for dual citizenship, you must be able to visit our website. All the requirements are listed there, and if I may go through each and every one of them, the essential requirement in applying for a dual citizenship is the presentation of an authenticated birth certificate issued by the Philippine Statistics Authority. Now, this used to be the National Statistics Office. Now it's called the PSA. And there are two ways to obtain that. Number one is you may go to their website and request for an authenticated birth certificate online. You will probably receive it in a month's time, or the most convenient way is to have a friend or relative get one for you in the Philippines, which would probably take about a day, and then have it sent here by DHL, and that'll take another 3 or 4 days. So you probably have your authenticated birth certificate in a week's time. The other requirements are the submission of photocopies of your U.S. naturalization certificate, photocopy of your U.S. passport, a photocopy of your old Philippine passport, and for our ladies married, of course, also a presentation of the authenticated marriage certificate. Currently, I'd like to inform everyone that the dual citizenship applications at the consulate is suspended because about a month and a half ago, we received over 2,500 applications. I repeat, over 2,500 applications. And since we are strictly following federal and local government health and safety regulations, we have to practice strict social distancing. We can only accommodate half of what we used to accommodate during pre-COVID-19 times. So if you can just imagine, all our schedules have been filled up all the way till the end of December. We even had to open Saturdays just to accommodate the surge of dual citizenship applications. So I would like to appeal to our kababayans who are listening right now. If your visit to the Philippines is not really an emergency, I would highly recommend that you forgo of your planned visit to the Philippines for next year. We are, however, going to open up our schedules again by the 15th of December. This will be for the January slots. Uh, I would also like to add that in addition to the requirements I earlier stated, you must be able to download the application form from our website, accomplish it, and the fee for a dual citizenship application is $50 payable in cash or money order. Um, we do not accept credit cards. And the second question, Chris, if you can repeat it, please.
Yes, sir. The second part of the question is, when will the travel restrictions on former Filipinos or foreigners or naturalized U.S. citizens ease up when it comes to entering the Philippines?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. I would like to also inform our listeners that the decision to suspend the Balikbayan visa privilege was a decision given by the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases. Your guess is as good as mine as to when this will be lifted. It will, of course, depend on how the Philippines will address the issue of the pandemic. If we can control the pandemic, if there would probably be a vaccine on hand. These are all questions that we hope would be addressed in the near future. Then we can probably lift the suspension on the entry of Balikbayans in the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Consul General Adelia Cruz, for that answer. I hope that all of you that had a similar question um, got your answer from that. Now, the second question I think is directed to the honorary consul. However, I think he might have stepped out, but I think the consul general can answer this. I don't know. Anyone can answer this as well. So Miss Pepsi Dizon Guerrero is asking the impact of COVID to Filipinos in San Diego on job opportunities or employment, especially to those who are just starting their new life in the USA.
I am not sure if our honorary consul is online, but I'd be happy to answer that. As in all challenging times, nobody expected the pandemic to occur in 2020. And yes, it did affect a lot of people, not just American citizens, not just immigrants, but especially those who are newly arrived in the country. Uh, uh, Employment opportunities are not as good as it was. So what I would like to recommend to our newly arrived kababayans is reach out to the different Filipino American organizations in your areas. They are in the best position to help you identify employment opportunities. Do not be scared to reach out to them. Huwag po kayong mahiya. And as our other speakers have uh, often commented, the Bayanihan spirit here in the United States is still as strong as ever. So reach out to our Filipino American organizations. Again, they are in the best position to advise you on what employment opportunities are there during this current pandemic times.
Thank you very much, Consul General Adel Cruz, for those answers. I hope that our kababayans out there can get hope. And please, wag na po kayong mahiya, okay? Now, for our last question, this is from Dr. Chris Liban. I think that our friends from the CFO can answer this. How can we collaborate and communicate more for the betterment of the diaspora of Philippine government relations? So anyone from CFO can answer that?
Yeah, I think we can be reached through our Facebook page. We can be reached through our website. no? It's quite it's not difficult. You just type in the Commission Filipinos Overseas, and you'll see that we have a lot of Facebook pages, and we are easy to get in touch with, and we will assure you that we will reply to whatever queries or whatever issues or concern that may need our reaction. Joanna, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you very much, Secretary Acosta, for that. We are very grateful for your answers. And if anyone from our panelists have any last words to our Filipinos, to our kababayans that are watching out there, I think also General Cruz has something to say. Conjen?
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Secretary Acosta for giving us this opportunity to be a partner with the CFO for this UGNAYAN seminar, being the first Philippine foreign mission in the United States. Sir, it's truly an honor. We were hoping to see you and the entire team here this year. Unfortunately, the pandemic has prevented us from doing so. I will definitely be calling on you, visiting your good office when I return to Manila, sir. Thank you very much po. Maraming salamat. For the listeners tonight, I would also like to thank you for your continued support, to the consulate, for the speakers. Excellent job, very informative. And to our listeners, uh, please understand that the Consulate General here in Los Angeles, as well as the other foreign missions all over the United States, are doing its best to provide quality service to our kababayans, 4 million strong in the United States. For those of you who were complaining on the difficulty of getting in touch or calling the consulate, I would like to share with you that on the average, we receive at least 350 calls a day. Bear in mind that we are the consulate that has jurisdiction over 1.4 million Filipinos. So it is quite difficult to get through our trunk line. If you get a busy signal, that means our phone lines are engaged. We also receive over 300 emails a day, and we do our best to reply to each and every one of them. At this point, I would like to sincerely extend my profound gratitude to my colleagues at the Philippine Consulate who have been working tirelessly in providing quality service to our kababayans here. This is a team effort, and I would like to publicly acknowledge and thank all my colleagues at the consulate for their hard work and dedication to their jobs. Back to you, Chris.
Thank
I
you very
also take this opportunity to express our profoundest thanks and deepest gratitude to Conjen Adele. We are very fortunate na inabutan ka namin dyan sa Los Angeles as the Consul General.
Salamat.
And of course, we know that your term in Los Angeles will soon expire by end of December. It is a great loss for Los Angeles, no? But it will be an addition to wherever you will be reassigned. But in the meantime, when you travel to Manila, we're always here. And I appreciate even your friendship. So I hope that will be long lasting. And thank you din si Consul Dayan, no? At si Vice Consul Joanna, thank you very much. I hope that our partnership in promoting the welfare of our kababayans will continue. Maraming salamat, lalo na yung mga kababayan natin na nagsalita rin dito, no? So that's all.
Thank you very much, Secretary Acosta and Consul General Cruz. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time left to answer more questions, but don't worry, all of your concerns and questions that we're not able to answer have been collected and will be shared with our resource speakers so we could respond to them after this webinar. Should you have follow-up questions in relation to today's discussion, you may also email them to onlineugnayan.cfo@gmail.com and we will get back to you with the appropriate response or referral. Finally, so to wrap up our discussions, may we ask Undersecretary Astrovel Pimentel Naik, Executive Director of CFO, to give us the synthesis and ways forward.
Magandang gabi sa ating lahat. We are now nearing the end of this very important online platform where we have heard the concerns of our Filipino communities in Southern California, including Los Angeles and San Diego, Southern Nevada, and Arizona. Like the actual Ugnayan last year, we are grateful for the opportunity to listen and try to do our part in ensuring that the programs and services of the Philippine government reach far beyond the shores of the Philippines. We are very much thankful for the support given to us by the Philippine Consulate General in Los Angeles through the Honorable Consul General Adelio Angelito S. Cruz. In his welcome remarks, Conjun Cruz applauded the efforts of CFO in the conduct of the Ugnayan series despite the pandemic, and he mentioned the perfect timing of the program since October is also the Filipino-American History Month in the USA. He also commended the initiative to hold the Ugnayan series again in Los Angeles, since Filipinos hold the third most population from Asian countries in the US, with 4 million Filipino Americans behind China and India. Conjun Cruz also emphasized that regardless of the hardships brought about by the pandemic, he is lucky that Filipinos in Los Angeles showed the bayanihan spirit among their kababayans who were heavily affected by COVID-19. In fact, all the other speakers there has also shared the bayanihan spirit of our fellow Filipinos. Although this will be the last year of Conjun Cruz in office, he urged Filipino Americans to do the following, and we would just like to emphasize these 4 points. First, to continue helping our kababayans in the Philippines, especially during these trying times. To connect with the different Philippine communities in the US to build strong alliance and relationships with each other. Third, to always display the best Filipino traits. And fourth, yes, to visit the Philippines and learn about the 7,000 plus islands. Thank you, Conjun Cruz, for providing this information and all the available consular services that may be availed of by our kababayans in your office. The very comprehensive report from Justice Francisco P. Acosta, the CFO chairperson and secretary, about how the Philippine government is faring in terms of addressing the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country was emphasized, and that the government is pulling all the stops in the fight against COVID-19, from the prevention of the spread of the virus to the management of the disease and to the provision of assistance to those whose livelihood were adversely affected in view of the quarantine protocols, as well as the efforts extended to overseas Filipinos who were repatriated. During the first part of the program, we listened to our distinguished community leaders from Los Angeles, Arizona, and the beautiful ladies from Nevada as they painted pictures of what the Filipino communities are doing. The concerns brought about by the pandemic are indeed varied and has affected all sectors of our society. We are proud at how our overseas Filipinos are trying to overcome challenges, and we are grateful for the efforts being done by our kababayans in trying to mitigate the effects for others. We also touched on the legal concerns of the community, which were discussed by no less than our honorary consul in San Diego County, Odi de Castro, and our presidential awardee attorney, Joe Sayas, after which we heard the updates on the effect of the 2020 U.S. Census to the Filipino community. Equally important is the interesting discussion on the effects of travel restrictions to U.S.-based overseas Filipinos. Some of the issues that came up were the entry of former Filipino citizens who are now U.S. passport holders, visa requirements for former Filipinos, persons accompanying Filipino citizens, persons accompanying such as the foreign spouses and children, the travel restrictions for those who will undertake humanitarian activities in the Philippines, and a lot more. Lastly, we heard from our CFO representatives about the response of the government through the Exchange Visitors Program Committee on the concerns arising from the participation of Filipinos to the U.S. program, as well as some of the programs of CFO in engaging our overseas Filipinos, including the Linkapil program and our major awards systems that give recognition to our overseas Filipinos. So we are hoping that you will nominate exemplary individuals and organizations in the U.S. to join the PAFIO Awards and even the MAM Awards. We are aware that overseas Filipinos indeed have a lot of concerns that they want to be addressed, as evidenced by the figure in which they ask their questions through Zoom and through FB Live. We are all experiencing a period of uncertainty since the COVID-19 has put everyone in an unknown situation, and not all have specified guidelines or ready answers at the moment. Let me thank our speakers for their contribution to this Ugnayan and being part of our dialogue process. For other concerns that we were unable to address today, just as Joa said, we will exert our best efforts to ensure that appropriate measures are studied or proposed. Please note that the welfare of our citizenry will always be at the forefront of crafting or reviewing policies and programs. We assure our kababayans that all your concerns are being taken to heart, and laws and regulations and services are constantly and continuously being reviewed by the appropriate agencies of the government. As mentioned also by Justice Acosta in his message earlier, our president has a high trust approval rating which is unsurpassed by any other leader. In fact, siya lang yata ang nakakatanggap nito ng rating na ito sa buong mundo. And let's salute our president for that. Let us all trust him and the men and women in this government and give our support so that we will all reap the rewards of our unity. We can only beat COVID if we all subscribe to the laws being put in place for our safety and protection. I therefore enjoin everyone to remain careful and hopeful. We all look forward to the day that we can all be together physically. But for now, let our hearts and minds be united in our common desire to be free from this virus. And to all the Filipinos in Los Angeles, California, and USA as a whole, maraming salamat for being interested once again and loving our Philippines. The fact that you are applying for dual citizenship and the hands of Conjo Nadel Cruz is so full with your applications is an indication that the Philippines is moving forward, and this is a high time that the Filipinos will really bring back their best to the country where they belong. Paalam hanggang sa muli nating pagkikita, and see you in our next online ugnayan, which will be held in South Korea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Nai. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our online Ugnayan sa Los Angeles. Again, thank you very much to all our speakers for sharing their time and expertise. Thank you also to all our online viewers in the Philippines, the USA, and the rest of the world for tuning in with us. From late at Los Angeles, have a pleasant evening to everyone. My name is Macris Criado. Have a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you also
Thank
to you, Vice Consul Macris, for co-hosting this event. The Commission on Filipinos Overseas is once again thankful for the support of the Philippine Consulate General in LA to this online ugnayan. It has been always a great pleasure to be working with everyone at the consulate. To our online participants who wish to have their e-certificate for participating in this webinar, kindly respond to the online evaluation form within an hour after signing off. You can find the link to the evaluation form in our Zoom and Facebook chat box. The online ugnayan sa Los Angeles has finally ended, but we will see you again in the third installment of this online ugnayan series. Our next stop is in Seoul, South Korea. No passport and visa needed. Join us in our online ugnayan sa Korea on November 8, 2 p.m. Philippine time, and that's 3 p.m. in Korea. Another online ugnayan will be also happening for our kababayans in Hawaii on November 21st, 4 p.m. Hawaii time, and that's November 22nd, 10 a.m. here in Manila. As a follow-up activity to our series of ugnayan, the CFO is also planning to organize another webinar, this time focusing on engaging overseas Filipinos through the provision of humanitarian aid to the Philippines. This may be a concern of our overseas Filipinos who want to resume their humanitarian work in the Philippines as they anticipate the lifting of travel restriction as soon as the threat of the pandemic abates. So to keep you updated with our upcoming ugnayan activities, please follow us on Facebook, Commission on Filipinos Overseas, and visit our website, www.cfo.gov.ph. Once again, thank you very much to all our speakers in the US and here in the Philippines for joining us. To all our viewers, maraming salamat for watching, and we will see you again. This is Joanna Rodriguez from CFO. Hashtag We Rise as One. This is the Commission on Filipinos Overseas, online ugnayan sa Los Angeles, signing off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
Secretary
night,
Acosta.
everybody.
Maraming salamat sa lahat. Maraming salamat sa iyo. Okay, lista lang. Not well, walang perfect pa talaga.